Hello everyone, my name is Jason Fox and I am going to do a quick little presentation on what I had done over the last week with intellectual property protection processes. This is part of STG 390, Professionalism in Science and Technology. What I'm going to be going over, basically, it's pretty easy, this is pretty quick. It will be what is an IP, the three types of IPs, the IP process, and then my flow chart and discuss it and how things are going to how important certain things are in the process. Uh, so as far as what is an IP, it stands for intellectual property, and that is the point of it is to help protect people from having somebody come along and copying something or stealing it and making money off of something that you worked hard on doing. A good way. So as far as what I will be focusing more on is the software aspect. And with software, if I go out and I create we'll say a web browser or a pop-up in a web browser, somebody could come along, get that code and create their own, change one or two little things, change the code, and create their own pop-up that is exactly the same and monetize it in the same way that I would be monetizing it. This, of course, has been frowned upon. A lot of things have happened, like with companies like Coca-Cola or something, protecting their their intellectual property of the ingredients. This helps give that company longevity, and eventually it can be sold once you had it. Uh, Once you've gone through the process of protecting it, you can sell it. There's transfer process. It's a lot of paperwork, but it's usually not something people do. All right, let's get into. Let's talk about these types. So the copyright is what I'll be focusing on since it's the software aspect, which that's what you would do if you were going for intellectual property. Uh, of course, it could be other things such as art, music, photos, videos. It's a lot of artistic type things. Um, these are tend to be things that it's hard to exactly prevent somebody from copying it because when it's like art or music or a photo, for example, these things can be duplicated quite easily, especially with today's software and computers. So this also falls along the lines of software and code because there's an art form to it. Most people's codes are not the same because we all think of it as a different way of when we create it. A patent seems it's more of like I like to say physical objects that help making life better in some way. Not always true, uh, but they tend to be like machine type things or non-mechanical things. As you see, I have pencils or screwdrivers, tools. Tools is a great example. Um, and then there's a little more complicated part, which is protecting your way of creating something such as like a paint or metal, like a fluid, a real easy way to think of it, any kind of fluid, you got to create it. And when you create it, that process of creating it tends to be very specific, and that can be put under a patent to help protect it so that somebody else can't just come along and do it. And then finally, the trademark. Trademark could be like your words or phrases, pictures. As you see on here, the Pepsi symbol. Everybody knows the Pepsi symbol. I've had the Coca-Cola picture on here or the Chevy, logos, those things. They get trademarked so that somebody else can't make it. Of course, this doesn't work all that great with like countries like China, which do not care, and they do their own thing. I mean, they have exact copies, but there's the same laws don't apply among most Western countries in China. It's unfortunate, but I believe one day it will. It's just going to take time when China finally decides to be a part of the world more. But hopefully that's sooner than rather than later. So the intellectual property process, it helps give like when you create it, it helps gives you the idea of what you need to have, how to get there. It may actually bring up things that you had no idea what could be an issue that you could find out later. One thing that is pretty interesting, so as far as software, when you're in the property flowchart production, you could find out that, or it could be something, another part of that application or the software that needs to have an IP as well. As far when I was doing some research on it, that was actually kind of common, and you end up filing separate, uh, you know, separate things for it to help protect it, so that there's no way of somebody could come along and copy it. Okay, so now let me go over here. Here is the actual flow chart that I made. I had to put it on here because it's pretty extensive. Well, in my opinion, it's extensive. I know it's probably not that crazy, but I mean, it starts up here at the top, and you just work your way down. And what I found, well, there is a lot of points where you do need some sort of outside help. Like, there's no way to do it on your own, which is like over here, here. You need to have somebody, a counsel, a lawyer, people who are very familiar with these types of things to be able to get the job done. I mean, you basically go through it. What I learned was that you got to have documentation to help protect you and others. So, like here, this part says prepare documentation, the non-disclosure and non-compete agreements. So you do this to help protect yourself from somebody coming along and saying, "Well, I had helped you make this. There's no way. I want a piece of this," or "No, I was doing it first." When you have them sign that, that basically says that no, you had nothing to do with it. It is mine. I'm moving forward with it. I'm sure that at that point it probably gets kind of dirty, especially in large companies, places like Google. When you work for Google, you don't own like anything. Google like owns all of it. That's unfortunate, in my opinion, but Google does their thing. But one thing also here, I made I should put this big in red. The biggest thing I learned is you never ever file software, for example, on ever, because it is so easy for somebody to look at the code, change a little thing here and there, and then say it's completely new code, and it would be, legal, and there's nothing you could do about it. So when you create your software or your program, whatever it is, you put an algorithm in it so that people can't get inside of it and look at it. I thought it's smart. I mean, it makes sense, and I kind of understood that prior, but now I really understand it. But once you get it all packaged up, you bring it to the lawyer, the patent lawyer. They do everything they got to do. There's a lot of paperwork involved. It's not a single person process by any means. You have to have a crew work on it together to get this done. If you're by yourself, the patent lawyer will help do a lot of it for you, but they're going to give you like almost like a checklist of things you have to get done. Filing. Uh, and the only thing else that I remember is once you get everything done, you do got to kind of like right here. I have monitor for possible theft. Is you do kind of have to pay attention, especially on the software, if somebody's trying to steal your idea. I imagine with Apple and Google, a lot of these things happened, and a lot of lawsuits were happened because of it. I know, like Samsung, I know had to stop a lot of their things on their phones because they were copyrighted by Apple, which is unfortunate. But again, I understand it because it's money. If money's involved, it's whoever's got the bigger stick. Basically, they're gonna first come, first serve. Um, but really, you when you're monitoring, if you find somebody else is doing something similar, maybe it's somebody that had signed a non-disclosure agreement, and now they're doing something exactly the same. You can you send the information to them, so they'll cease and desist paperwork. If they refuse, then you got to go the legal route. If they don't refuse and they sign it and they're done, you're good to go. You don't have to do anything. But if it is a repeat offense, yeah, then you contact a property attorney, and at that point, I imagine it gets pretty messy. I bet there's a lot of there is a lot of proof process in that of who did it first, whose code it was first, who's one signed on the code inside the code, whose names are on there, the dates. A lot of watermarks, for example, especially on like photos. You got to have these things to help protect yourself. But as far as that goes, it's pretty straightforward. It's not, it looks like there's a lot here, but it's really not. The sub processes are very important on both sides. Without them, you really can't flow. It will not flow. So if you took out this entire process and you just skipped right to here, this could be an issue here with it had been filed previously by somebody. Then you're going to find out the hard way and you're going to be really upset. Here's the reference information. I had a lot of references on this. I had to do a lot of research, but I did make sure I got some from Google. Google, there was quite a bit of information there. I was actually surprised at how freely they talk about it. Um, here's the questions. If you need contact information. One last thing I want to talk about, and that's here. I found this very interesting because I understood that you didn't want to show what you were doing. And here, they said to make sure you don't file the code, but you show examples of what the code's going to do, and this is what Google has shown is what it does. And I thought that was very fascinating, and I like that a lot. Now I understand it, so it's a big deal. And as you can see, it's never one person. On any of the ones that I saw, there was never just one guy or one gal. It was always a couple people at least, and then they have to renew it. Anyway, it's a very fascinating process. Uh, Again, I like it. It's intimidating, but with the lawyer, I don't think it'll be that bad when I at any point if I have to do a an IP process basically. But again, thank you. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at my email. And I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a nice day. Thank you.